Hello, this week the Scotland Channel comes from Dumfries in Galloway. We are in Wigtown for the annual book festival. Jenny Lindsay, so how are you enjoying the festival down here at Wigtown?
Yeah, it's really good. I'm really pleased to be at Wigtown, and Wigtown were actually one of the only literary organisations that used to do work for as a poet who didn't cancel me. So I was delighted that they had me at the book festival as well.
How did you become a poet, or how does any young person become a poet in Scotland today?
Well, it's very different today than it was back in my day. I was a performance poet, so I started out in sort of pubs and clubs and bars, and I wouldn't even have considered getting booked for a literary festival because it was more of a sort of crossover with stand-up comedy and live storytellers. And I came into it by accident in my early 20s, and I just fell in love with the live poetry world as the way of sort of combining storytelling and, as I say, stand-up and poetry all together. So yeah, that's how I started out there, and I fell in love with it, and then I set to promoting the art form because I never thought there was much point in me just focusing on my own poetry if there was no scene. So I worked on building that scene to where it got to in 2019.
If anyone hasn't seen Jenny or any of the events that she's involved with, I did see you at a place in south side of Glasgow about a year and a half ago. You played in the Rum Shack, and that was a really interesting afternoon with you and a lot of other excellent performers. But let's move up to 2019. So you were from Ayrshire, but you moved to Edinburgh, came to a standstill round about 2019. Do you want to quickly go over what happened then?
Yeah, I'll try and be as brief as possible because I've told this story so many times. But in 2019, I decided to speak out publicly about the violence that was being done to women who were attempting to have meetings to discuss changes to the Gender Recognition Act. And that was taking place in a wider sort of Scottish literary culture where people were starting to do things like, I was a programmer. People had started doing things like complaining to me if I booked someone they disagreed with. So it was all, this is a very different way of doing things than the scene that I came up in my 20s. So I was very aware of these new trends and I really didn't like them. So I chose to speak out in 2019. And what happened was I was targeted as they called me a TERF, which stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. And once you get that label, it's very difficult to lose that label. And people use that label to justify trying to basically hound you out of polite society, which is what happened to me in Edinburgh via a variety of different methods. Some very quiet cancellation, so people no longer hiring me for things I used to do, and some far more louder, things like open letters and that kind of thing. So it was a horrible experience to go through. I moved to Ayrshire, and then lockdown happened, and I set to writing my way out, basically, which is what I have been determined to do ever since this started. So
what you say in your book are really three core defining features of what feminism is all about. First of all, it's possible to say what a woman is. It's possible to define a woman and a man, a male and a female, as two different sets which don't overlap.
Yeah.
And secondly, that women have their own needs, and therefore that leads to the third point, which is that they have the opportunity, they have the right to meet and organise and talk about those. But you say that's what you believe, and I think most people in Scotland believe that. But some people don't believe that.
Yeah.
But it ought to be possible to talk about it. Yeah. If I summarise that right?
Yeah, just about. I always say this is the status quo position in UK law, and I was saying that even before that was confirmed by the Supreme Court that these are the legal status quo in the UK, is that women are a category definition of adult human females. They have rights and needs on that basis. So it's on that basis is the second one is the thing that everything's contested on. And the third one is, that's human rights we're talking about there. So these are the status quo beliefs. So women getting attacked for holding status quo beliefs is a very serious matter, because that means that the fabric of our democracy is actually being threatened, because these are the legal positions that ensure women's privacy, dignity and safety. So, yeah, the reason I bring it back to those three core beliefs is these are things that everyone used to agree with. And people are missing that this is what the discussion is actually about, because it's got tangled up in talking about loads of things it's not about, like gender identity and blah, blah, blah. It's not actually a route about that. It's about women.
So in your opinion, why did the SNP get so carried away with this trendy new transgender movement?
I think partly for the reasons that I became embroiled in the opposite side, actually. Once they'd started, it's very difficult for them to admit that they've done something wrong. I mean, it shouldn't be, because they should be mature legislators. But I mean, in the face of overwhelming evidence that the public didn't want this, they pushed for self-ID, and they passed self-ID with cross-party support. And we had to be saved by the UK government to have that overturned. Yeah, I mean, as we can see with Nicola Sturgeon's book tour that she's doing just now, I mean, she's continuing to double down even after the evidence and even after the Supreme Court has proven she was wrong. She's continuing to double down. Why did she get so obsessed with it? She needed a cause. She needed a cause. She wasn't as popular in the party as her predecessor, and she surrounded herself with people who agreed with her, and she refused to listen to any dissenters. And when she did listen to dissenters, she had bad faith in their motivations. So Joanna Cherry wasn't being a principled woman standing up for her rights. She was just saying these things to attack me personally. It was very immature, the way Nicola Sturgeon responded to critics. So, yeah, that's it.
One of the strange things to me is that the people I've met since in this kind of debate, the women, I think nearly all are people who supported independence, and they were probably all members of independence campaigns. So the official view of the SNP seems to be that you're hostile, or you're anti-something or other, or you're right-wing. But it looks to me, well, don't forget the SNP were about 52% of the opinion polls about 4 years ago, and now they're somewhere in the 30s. Right, so has this actually cost the SNP? Do you think they should be worried about the loss of women's people who used to support them?
Yeah, I mean, at first, what was quite remarkable to me is even some gender-critical friends of mine, they would still vote for the SNP because they were like, yeah, but independence. I know so many women who are now like, do you know what? It's not the biggest cause anymore. This is the biggest cause. And that includes people who were very high profile yes campaigners. So it has really shifted people's views. And I think I voted yes as well, and I campaigned for yes. But before I could do that again, I'd have to see changes in the Scottish Parliament and the committee system that allowed these really bad laws to be passed. Before any chat about constitutional change, we need our institutions back. So we need them back to sense. And I think that's the next thing that needs to happen.
So I'm not going to keep you any longer, so I know you've had a busy day, so thanks for speaking to the Scotland Channel today. So we'll just finish off with saying the reason you're here is because the book Hounded is out now on Polity books, so congratulations to Polity for actually publishing. Yeah. And I have read 2/3 of it now, and it really is worth reading. So have a look at it. It should be in your bookshop, and if it's not in your bookshop, you should ask them why not.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, for a quick interview. And yeah, please do buy my book because I have very little income. Thanks.
It's definitely heading into porridge weather. So this morning we're going to have a story all about porridge and 3 very hungry bears. Once upon a time in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. 3 bears. One was a papa bear, one was a mama bear, one was a wee bear. Was a wee bear. Well, they all went walking in the big woods a-talking. Along came a little girl with long golden flowing curls. Her name was Goldilocks, and up upon the door she knocked. She didn't care that no one was there. Home came those 3 bears. Someone's been eating my porridge, said the papa bear. I said the mama bear. Hey, mama me bear, said the little wee bear. Someone has broken my chair. Crush! Goldilocks woke up, broke up the party, and ran right out of there. Those 3 bears, 3 bears. Hungry, hungry, hungry. 3 bears. Whew.
And with Rab Wilson, writer in Scots. So Rab, thanks for joining us here on the Scotland Channel at the Wigtown Book Festival.
Good morning, Hugh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, today you were with the Waynes, weren't you? You were talking about Scots language for ordinary, everyday animals, names of parts of the body, that sort of thing. How did that go?
Oh, it was great fun. The Wayne's doing here a right good. Sometimes they're up in the central belt or Alloway in Ayr or these kind of places. The Scots has maybe been educated out of them a wee bit. But when you're doing here, doing in Wigtown, you've got a kind of sort of semi-agricultural community and farmers and that still have a good Scots tongue in their heads. So they're familiar with a lot of Scots words. And it was great fun with them today. And they were really insightful. You know, it was the words that they knew and what they could contribute was it was really encouraging.
I noticed that the Scottish Parliament has now passed the Scottish Parliament Act, so they're supposed to be promoting the language of Scots, but they don't really speak Scots much in the Holyrood. It's plain English. That's what they say. They want everyone to be understood, right? What do you think of that? Are we no understood if we're talking Scots in the Scottish Parliament?
Oh, I think you do hear some MSPs that have got a more kind of sort of working class type Scots accent, speaking in their own lead in their own tongue. So you do get quite a strong sough with Scots in the Parliament with some of the speakers. And it's great to hear that. And there's no problem when folk do that. When they're speaking in a mere braid kind of Scots, everybody there seems to understand that there doesn't seem to be a problem with that. So Scots is spoken in the Parliament as it should be. And they've got facilities there if someone wishes to maybe speak in Gaelic, which is one of the other great indigenous leads in Scotland as well. So it's great that they've got the technology there so you can hear and understand the various languages of Scotland being spoken in the Parliament.
Now, the Scots language itself, as you're from the southwest, and in fact we're in Galloway today, is it the same language throughout all the areas of Scotland? I mean, it doesn't look the same to me as a Doric in the northeast. Can you actually say that wherever you are in Scotland, apart from in the Gaelic regions, is Scots basically the same, or are there different dialects of the same lead?
Well, as you say, it's all Scots. It's all Scots. But there are regional dialects, as you would expect from any language. If you went into England, they would probably tell you that they all spoke English. But there's English in the Geordies in Newcastle and the Burr or the Somerset levels, all these different sort of accents and dialects. And it's the same in Scotland. So we have various different dialects. Obviously, the sort of the Doric in Buchan and the northeast has a particular sound of its own. But so has Shetlandic. You know, Shetlandic Scots is almost kind of sib going way back to the Vikings. There's a souk of that about Shetlandic Scots. But down here in the southwest, it has I suppose a twang of Burnsian Scots. You know, the language that you read in the poetry of Robert Burns is still quite alive in some of these outlying sort of rural areas. So it's a vibrant language that is used every day.
I often wonder how Burns himself spoke when he was at home, because he wrote in English and he wrote in Scots, of course. His famous poetry and his famous songs are in Scots. But quite often when he wrote political essays, that was in standard English. So is it the case that really we need to be bilingual, need to remember our own language, but for broader consumption, if you like, speak plain English too? Should we have two languages?
Well, we do. We all kind of modify our language a bit depending who we're talking to. You know, and I have no problem with that. It's all about communication, you know, and you want to be understood. So if it's a case of speaking with folk who are no familiar with Scots, I'll maybe talk about Scots language in quite a kind of, sort of using a kind of standard English almost to speak to folk about Scots language, depending on where the folk are. But it's amazing how willing folk are to hear Scots and listen to it. Just last night here in Wigtown, they had the international and national Wigtown poetry competition. and there was a Gaelic section, there was an English section, there was a international section, there was a Scots section, there was prizes for all these different leads and languages, and it was a fabulous event just to hear all these poets, some speaking in Gaelic, others in Scots, English. It was just a celebration of language, really. And there was Scots being one of the main languages that was paired to the ongoings last night at the Poetry Prize, and it was just a mix and a melding, a melting pot of all these languages there in Wigtown, and an absolute joy to listen to that.
Do you think now that Scots is going to be promoted officially through the Scots Language Act, it's now the law in Scotland that we to promote the language, do you think schools will be paying more attention to make sure Wains don't lose the traditional Scots language?
Well, I suppose since about 2010 or thereabouts, there's been a constant move on the part of the SNP government to encourage and promote the use of Scots and Gaelic and keep these leads alive in our schools and in education. A decision years ago that a Scots language related question must be included in higher English and in O-level English. So that has to be a part of the curriculum and part of the examination sort of process in Scotland. And with the passing of the recent Scottish Languages Bill, then that just underscores and emphasises the path that we're on here, that we're wanting to do more and more to promote and keep these languages alive and encourage their use.
And lastly, Rab Wilson, have you enjoyed coming down to Booktown? This is not your first visit to Wigtown for the festival, is it?
Oh, I've been coming to the Booktown Festival for many years. I was here at the very first Booktown Festival at its inception, and the things we did in the very early days, the first book that I had published by Lewis Press in Edinburgh was a Scots hour setting or translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, the great Persian epic poem, in Scots. And John Robertson, who was the then sort of Booktown manager, had this brilliant idea, and it was his idea to create the biggest book in the world. And they made this huge, they got a computer printing company involved, these huge sort of 8 feet or 9 feet by 4 feet pages, and these wooden sort of bindings for this book. And we made this giant version, my version of the Rubaiyat Omar Khayyam in Scots. So that's a really, really fond memory that I treasure of my link with the Booktown. And I've been the bard of the festival here years ago, and I still come down and I still enjoy it. I take shelter in the Wigtown Plume Bar, so I was quite safe for the elements in there, tucked in nice and cosily. So Wigtown, I mean, there's been tons of things happening in their programme throughout the week. We had the young Scots poet Len Penny in the programme last week, who's a great advocate for Scots and does some, tremendously vibrant and energetic poetry in Scots, and young folk are embracing that. She's a huge following, hundreds of thousands of folk online that love her work and her poetry. So that's a great thing for the Scots language. And Money's another poet who's been involved in writers in the last couple of weeks. So Wigtown Festival is still a mainstay of the Scottish literary scene in lang may its long reek.
Well, I'm glad we all made the journey to Wigtown. So, Rab Wilson, thank you for talking to the Scotland Channel.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Thank you.
And with Renita Boyle, one of the people most active in the Wigtown Book Festival. Have you had a busy 10 days, Renita?
Oh my goodness, have we had a busy 10 days. It's been absolutely wonderful, and everyone around town is still buzzing, but of course, absolutely exhausted.
So you've put on several shows. I think you've done about 9 shows. Like, what sort of range of events have you been putting on?
Well, I'm the resident storyteller for the book festival. So, and I've been that for about 18 years. So I get to do all sorts of interesting events. So one of the best known events in the town is Book at Bedtime. And my son, who is now 24, has been doing that with me since he was 13. And basically we take over one of the bookshops in town. And at night time, at about 9 o'clock at night, adults come. Sometimes they dress in their pajamas even. And you get a story, a song, a poem, a lullaby, hot chocolate, and a hug as you go out the door. So it's basically like what you would get if you had babies, but it's for adults, and it's wonderful. So I do about 4 of those. And then I also do Wild Words, which is a very well-being focused event, and that's down in the Bird Hide, down in the bay. And there you get it like a very gentle. This year's theme was wee wings, so we did dragonflies, so we did a story, a song, a very gentle poem, a very gentle picture book, and then you make something together. So that's it's like well-being in wild spaces in the palm of your hand is basically what that event is. And then I also do a lot of work among young people and children. So I also had an event called Pandemonium, in which they were all jumping around like a frog, like if you're happy and you know it. So anyway, there was about 50 under 5s at that. And yeah, and then sometimes they just, like if something comes up, they will grab hold of me. And of course, in November, they do an author tour across the region, sometimes hitting like 50 schools. And I will be working with the book festival and PAMAS, who work with people who have profound multiple learning disabilities. And we'll be going to the schools in the region and doing multisensory stories and getting them resources.
I think it's true to say that the book festival really gave Wigtown a new lease of life.
I would say so. I mean, you have distinct populations of people in Wigtown, and I would say I don't know where we would be necessarily without the book festival and the people that it brings in. I know certainly my role within the book festival, albeit that I do a lot of work during the festival itself. I actually really work hard in the community all year around. On behalf of the book festival. So it's not just about what happens here during 10 days of authors coming in and out. The book festival is actually really committed to making sure that the literacy rates and the economic vibrancy of our area are in the fore all year round.
Well, everyone's relaxing now at the end of a very busy 10 days. The town's sleeping today, really, it looks like, after a hectic activity last week. But when do you think they start planning for next week's event?
Right away. Oh, right away. Yeah, so they'll give them, people will, so we're not quite at the relaxing stage. We're at the put the town back together kind of stage. Take down the marquees, put the chairs out, do the paperwork, those kind of things. So, but yeah, there'll be like a break, and then probably within the next month. They're already, planning for the next year.
The town is a mixture, as you've said, of I guess there must be the people who are here from Galloway. What do we say? Gallovidians, I think. And there's also, of course, people like yourself. You've come a bit further west. You came to Scotland for the weather, obviously.
Of course.
And of course, we're right by the borders. A lot of people coming up from England. Are they visitors, or a lot of English people moved in here, and are they part of the organising committee?
Well, actually, it is fascinating because we do actually have a strong local population whose families have been here for generations, and they themselves are here. We also have then a strong retirement community, and those are the folks like you're speaking of. They move here because they love it here and they want to retire here. And we do actually have a number of people who we tend to find that when people move to the town, a lot of them move here because they want to be involved in the festival or in the community. And I would say that's a great time. Oh, and then you have the booksellers and the artisans themselves who come. So you have three very distinct kinds of people who make up our community. And on the whole, I think we rub together quite well. But, we've got the community buyouts, the Plough is a community venture, the Old Church Hall, which we've just had to sell, is a community venture. People fight. We've got the play park. We've just raised loads of money for the new play park for the kids. And of course, we've got the church. I'm the pastor's wife as well. So the church is about to embark on trying to put on an extension at the back of the church because it's the church building itself is like the biggest building we have in Wigtown.
Yeah, it's an interesting location, Wigtown, of course. We are near the border with England. In fact, you can see the Lake District. I think you can, in theory. We haven't actually seen very much over this stormy weekend. But it really is a kind of a melting pot. But it's also what they call around here Scotland's greatest secret, because every year, every summer, thousands of people go up the M74 heading to the Highlands. People often say to me, no, don't tell anybody, it's lovely. We know that Galloway is great, but don't spoil it. Yes. People should, take a left as they go past Gretna.
I think you should definitely take a left going past. I think what's difficult is you want to be able, and it is kind of a challenging issue in the area, because you have people who really, we do want to protect and to preserve the beauty of the area and the local feel of it. But we also want people and need people to come and to visit and take that left off the motorway. And it is a lovely thing. So you do want to get the balance. I feel you want to get the balance. Now, I moved to Scotland 40 years ago. In fact, it was my 40th anniversary yesterday. So, and I loved the country. I do love the country, and it doesn't sound like I'm very Scots, but I've actually lived here longer now than I did in Wisconsin. And all the people around about me speak in Scots, of course. All the people I love the most say my name in Scots. Because in America, it's a soft. The T in the middle of my name is soft, so they'll say Renita. Here it's Renita. And it feels very strange if somebody in Scotland actually says my name with a soft D. I'm like, no, that's not right. You must say, So it is a lovely area. We're very glad to live here, and we have lived here in Wigtown for 18 years, and have never regretted our move here. It's amazing, but it also takes, I suppose, a different kind of person to be able to live rurally and off-grid, because our nearest traffic light is 45 minutes away. You are rather you can be isolated, but we are a strong community, and I love that about this place.
Well, we've certainly enjoyed being in Wigtown this weekend, so thank you, Renita Boyle, for speaking to the Scotland Channel.
You're very, very welcome.